betrayal rarely announces itself with a warning. For Oliver, it arrived disguised as a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Finding his alpha husband's scent smeared all over his own best friend was agonizing enough, but overhearing the confession of a positive pregnancy test shattered his world. He didn't scream, he simply vanished. Coffee sloshed over the rim of the ceramic mug, burning Oliver's thumb, but he barely registered the sting. He was too busy balancing a bakery box filled with Dominic's favorite hazelnut pastries while fumbling with his keys outside their luxury downtown Chicago penthouse. Today was their third wedding anniversary, a milestone Oliver had been meticulously planning for weeks. He had closed his independent bookstore early, wanting to surprise his alpha husband with a quiet, intimate afternoon before their reservations at a Michelin-starred restaurant that evening. Oliver's heart fluttered with a familiar, warm affection. Dominic Rossi was a formidable force in the corporate real estate world, a dominant alpha whose sharp pine and crisp ozone scent usually commanded boardrooms and intimidated rivals. But with Oliver, Dominic had always been a gentle giant. Their mating had been a fairy tale, a whirlwind romance that culminated in a beautiful ceremony overlooking Lake Michigan. Yet the past year had cast a long, quiet shadow over their perfect life. Oliver, an Omega with a naturally soft vanilla and toasted almond scent, had been struggling with fertility. Month after month of invasive clinic appointments, hormone injections, and negative tests had left him feeling hollow. Dominic had always been supportive, holding him through the tears and assuring him that they had time, that his love wasn't conditional on an heir. Oliver's best friend, Caleb, had been his other pillar of support. Caleb, also an Omega, had held Oliver's hand through the darkest days, brewing chamomile tea and offering endless shoulders to cry on. Pushing the heavy mahogany door open, Oliver stepped into the foyer. The penthouse was deathly quiet, the floor-to-ceiling windows casting long afternoon shadows across the polished hardwood. He kicked off his shoes, smiling to himself as he noticed Dominic's leather briefcase resting on the console table. His husband had actually managed to come home early, just as Oliver had hoped. However, as Oliver walked deeper into the apartment, an involuntary shudder wrecked through his spine. His Omega instincts flared, the hairs on his arms standing up. The air in the hallway leading to the master bedroom was thick, suffocatingly heavy, with a cocktail of pheromones that made his stomach violently churn. Dominic's sharp pine scent was there, but it wasn't calm. It was spiked with the aggressive, protective musk of a rutting alpha. Woven inextricably through it was the sweet, cloying scent of ripe peaches. Caleb's scent. Oliver froze in his tracks. The bakery box in his hands suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Omegas possessed an acute olfactory sensitivity, especially when it came to reading the biological states of other wolves. The peach scent wasn't just distressed, it was fundamentally altered. It carried the distinct, unmistakable milky undertone of a newly conceived pup. Footsteps feeling like lead, Oliver moved silently toward the partially open door of the master suite. The low murmur of voices drifted into the hallway. "You have to calm down, Caleb. The distress isn't good for... It's not good for you right now." Dominic's voice was a low, soothing rumble, a tone Oliver recognized. It was the voice Dominic used when Oliver woke up from nightmares. "How can I calm down, Dom?" Caleb's voice was shrill, breaking with a sob. "I just took 3 tests. They are all positive." 3. The doctor confirmed the blood work this morning. I'm 6 weeks along. That puts the conception right at the night of the charity gala. When you drove me home. When my heat spiked early and you lost control. Oliver stopped breathing. The hallway seemed to stretch and warp around him. The night of the charity gala, 6 weeks ago. Oliver had stayed home with a severe migraine, insisting Dominic go alone to represent his firm. Dominic had offered to take Caleb, who had wanted to network with the attendees. Dominic had come home late, smelling faintly of sweat and exhaustion, claiming the car had broken down and he'd had to walk miles after dropping Caleb off. He had showered immediately. I know, Dominic groaned, the sound laced with heavy, agonized guilt. It was a mistake, a biological misfire. We were both drunk. Your pheromones hit me in an enclosed space, and my instincts bypassed my brain. It meant absolutely nothing. It means a baby, Dominic. Caleb cried out. I'm carrying your child. Oliver's best friend is pregnant with your pup. Do you understand what this is going to do to him? He's been injecting himself with hormones for a year to give you this, and I get knocked up from one drunken mistake in the back of your car? Keep your voice down, Dominic hissed sharply. Oliver cannot know about this. Not yet. It will destroy him. I'll take care of you, Caleb. I'll set you up in a high-end apartment, cover all the medical expenses, establish a trust for the kid. But Oliver's my mate. He is my husband. This complication doesn't change that complication. The bakery box slipped from Oliver's numb fingers. It hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud, the cardboard bursting open to scatter crushed hazelnut pastries across the pristine rug. Inside the bedroom, the voices abruptly cut off. Silence, thick and terrified, descended on the apartment. Footsteps thundered toward the door before it was ripped open. Dominic stood there, his tie loosened, his hair a disheveled mess. Over his broad shoulder, Oliver could see Caleb sitting on the edge of their marital bed, clutching one of Dominic's pillows to his chest, his eyes wide and red-rimmed. The visual confirmation was a physical blow. Seeing Caleb, the man who had dried Oliver's tears over negative pregnancy tests, sitting on the bed Oliver shared with his husband, smelling of Dominic's claim and a newly formed life. It was a betrayal so profound, so absolute, that it bypassed Oliver's capacity for grief and tapped directly into a cold, terrifying clarity. Ollie, Dominic breathed, all the color draining from his handsome face. The alpha's protective musk vanished, instantly replaced by the sour, acrid stench of pure panic. Ollie, baby, how long have you been standing there? Oliver didn't answer. He didn't cry. He looked at Dominic, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. He looked at Caleb, who was now sobbing quietly into his hands, and felt absolutely nothing. The mating bite, on the juncture of Oliver's neck, a mark he had worn with immense pride for 3 years, suddenly burned like a branding iron. His omega instincts, usually soft and yielding to his alpha, violently recoiled. Oliver, please, Dominic begged, taking a step forward and reaching out a shaking hand. Please, let me explain. It's not what you think. It was an accident, a purely biological reaction, a heat-induced frenzy. Don't touch me, Oliver said. His voice was unrecognizable. It wasn't loud, it wasn't hysterical. It was dead. The sheer absolute zero of his tone made Dominic freeze, the alpha's hand hovering in midair. Oliver slowly reached out to his left hand. With steady, deliberate movements, he pinched the thick platinum and diamond band sitting on his ring finger, the ring that Dominic had designed himself, the ring that symbolized their eternal bond. Ollie, no, don't do that. Please don't do that. Dominic's voice cracked, tears finally spilling over his eyelashes. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the crushed pastries on the floor. I love you. You are my mate. He means nothing. The pup means nothing. I'll sign my rights away. I'll send him away. Just please don't take the ring off. Caleb let out a wounded gasp from the bedroom, but Oliver ignored him completely. He slid the metal over his knuckle. It slid off easily. Too easily. He didn't throw it at Dominic's face. He didn't scream obscenities. Oliver simply held his hand out over the glass console table in the hallway and let go. Clink. The sound of the heavy platinum hitting the glass was deafening in the silent apartment. It rolled in a slow circle before coming to a complete final rest. "Congratulations on the pup, Dominic," Oliver said, his eyes devoid of any warmth. He turned on his heel and walked toward the front door. "Oliver," Dominic roared, an alpha command tearing from his throat, an instinctual, desperate attempt to make his Omega submit and stay. The command washed over Oliver, but the betrayal had already severed the emotional tethers of their bond. The command didn't force him to his knees. It only made him nauseous. He opened the front door, stepped out into the corridor, and let the heavy door slam shut behind him, cutting off Dominic's anguished scream. Oliver moved with mechanical efficiency. He didn't go to the bank. Dominic would track the cards. He didn't take his car. The GPS was linked to Dominic's phone. He walked 3 blocks to a pawn shop, sold his luxury watch for a fraction of its worth in cold, untraceable cash, and bought a burner phone. He took a bus to the outskirts of the city, checking into a run-down motel under a fake name. Sitting on the lumpy mattress that smelled of stale smoke and bleach, Oliver finally allowed the shock to wear off. The dam broke. He curled his knees to his chest and screamed until his throat bled, grieving the death of his marriage, his best friend, and the life he thought he knew. When the tears finally stopped hours later, a hardened resolve took their place. Dominic Rossi was a powerful man who would not let his property go easily. If Oliver wanted to survive, he had to become a ghost. Back at the penthouse, the first 48 hours were a blur of denial and arrogance for Dominic. He sat on the floor of the hallway, staring at the platinum ring, convinced Oliver was just punishing him. He assumed Oliver had checked into a luxury hotel to cool off, waiting for Dominic to grovel. But when day 3 dawned and Oliver's lawyer delivered a flawlessly executed, heavily ironclad petition for emergency divorce and total dissolution of assets, reality crashed down on Dominic like a concrete building. Dominic tore through the city. He hacked into Oliver's bank accounts, untouched. He tracked Oliver's phone found crushed in a public trash can near the subway. He interrogated the staff at Oliver's bookstore, only to find out Oliver had digitally transferred the entire ownership of the business to his manager via an automated email timed for midnight. By the end of the week, Dominic was unrecognizable. The polished, charismatic CEO was gone. His eyes were feral, ringed with deep black circles. He hadn't slept or eaten, his body violently rejecting the sudden dramatic severing of the mating bond. The phantom pain in his teeth and neck was excruciating. He threw Caleb out of the penthouse, ignoring the pregnant Omega's pleas. The sight of Caleb, the scent of the child that had destroyed his life, made Dominic physically violently ill. He set up an anonymous trust fund to cover Caleb's expenses, completely washing his hands of the man. Dominic hired the 3 most ruthless, expensive private investigation firms in the country. He spent millions bribing airline officials, hacking into municipal traffic cameras, and paying off underground information brokers. He turned his vast corporate empire into a singular, obsessive machine designed to hunt down one Omega. Find him, Dominic snarled at his head of security, his voice a ragged, demonic rasp as he paced his destroyed office like a caged predator. I don't care if you have to tear up every floorboard in this country. I don't care what it costs. Find my husband. But Oliver Hayes was gone, leaving behind nothing but the fading scent of vanilla and an alpha rapidly descending into pure, unadulterated madness. 6 months dissolved into a cold, relentless winter in the coastal town of Astoria, Oregon. Oliver had meticulously erased his past, burying his former identity under layers of cash transactions and a fabricated history. He now went by Nolan, working quietly in the dusty archives of the Clatsop County Historical Society. The damp, salty air of the Pacific Northwest was a stark contrast to the sterile, high-altitude luxury of his former Chicago penthouse. but it offered something invaluable: absolute anonymity. Winter mornings in Astoria were brutal, but Oliver welcomed the biting chill. It kept him grounded. However, a strange, persistent exhaustion had begun to seep into his bones over the past few weeks. He initially blamed it on the stress of fleeing, the trauma of severing a mating bond, and the physical toll of working long hours archiving maritime manifests. But when the scent of freshly brewed coffee at the local diner caused him to violently empty his stomach in the alleyway, denial was no longer an option. Oliver sat shivering on the crinkled paper of an examination table at Columbia Memorial Hospital, a small but fiercely private medical facility overlooking the turbulent river. Dr. Harrison, an older beta with kind eyes and a gruff bedside manner, stared intently at the ultrasound monitor. "Well, Nolan," Dr. Harrison said gently, turning the screen toward Oliver, "your exhaustion isn't a mystery. You're exactly 22 weeks along. It's a very healthy, very strong alpha pup." The sterile walls of the clinic seemed to cave in. Oliver stared at the grainy black and white image, his breath hitching. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the fetal heartbeat filled the small room, deafening in its implications. The brutal, agonizing irony of the universe crashed down upon him. The expensive, exhausting IVF treatments he had endured in Chicago had finally worked, taking root mere days before his entire world was incinerated by betrayal. He was carrying his ex-husband's child. Tears, hot and heavy, spilled down Oliver's cheeks. He pressed a trembling hand over his slightly swollen stomach, hidden beneath layers of oversized wool sweaters. This pup was a piece of the man who had shattered his heart, but it was also entirely his. A profound, fierce maternal instinct, ancient and undeniable, flared to life within his chest. "Are you safe, Doctor?" Harrison asked, his voice lowering to a protective murmur. "Omegas don't usually arrive in this town alone, paying exclusively in cash, hiding behind layers of oversized clothing. If there is an alpha looking for you—" "He doesn't know," Oliver whispered, his voice gaining a sudden, steely resolve. "And he never will. This is my child. Mine alone. Thousands of miles away, the alpha in question was drowning in a hell of his own making. Rossi Enterprises, once a titan of the corporate real estate world, was hemorrhaging money. The board of directors, backed by ruthless equity giants like Vanguard Group and Blackstone, had staged an emergency intervention. The CEO had become a feral, unpredictable liability. Rossi hadn't worn the tailored suit in months. His penthouse was a biohazard of broken glass, empty whiskey bottles, and shredded documents. The once commanding alpha scent of pine and ozone had soured into the rancid, terrifying stench of a wolf separated from its mate. Rossi sat in the dark, staring at a massive corkboard covered in maps, flight manifests, and blurry security photos. He had spent upwards of $40 million hunting Oliver, employing a network of former intelligence operatives. Every lead had turned to ash. Oliver had vanished like a ghost. The heavy oak doors of the penthouse library groaned open. Gideon, a scarred, ruthless private investigator with a background in international espionage, stepped into the gloom. He tossed a thick, manila folder onto the mahogany desk. "Did you find him?" Rossi croaked, his voice a ruined, desperate grasp. He lunged forward, his eyes wild with sleep deprivation. "No," Gideon replied coldly, "but I found something else. You paid me to look into every anomaly surrounding the day your mate vanished. I dug into Caleb's financial records and medical history. You need to look at this." Rossi's hands shook as he ripped the folder open. Inside were heavily redacted bank statements and grainy photographs from a surveillance camera in a notorious, gang-controlled sector of the south side of Chicago. The photos showed Caleb handing a thick envelope of cash to a known black market pharmaceutical dealer. The dates, Gideon pointed a scarred finger at the paper. 7 days before your charity gala, Caleb purchased a highly illegal military-grade synthetic pheromone trigger. It's designed to artificially induce a massive heat spike and completely bypass an alpha's prefrontal cortex, forcing a rut. It's a date-rape drug for wolves. Rossi stopped breathing. The letters on the page swam before his eyes. Your best friend wasn't a victim of a biological accident, Gideon stated, his voice devoid of pity. He orchestrated it. He weaponized his own biology to trap you, hoping to secure a piece of your empire. The pregnancy was a calculated, premeditated theft. A roar, inhuman and utterly terrifying, erupted from Rossi's chest. It was the sound of an alpha realizing he had traded his soul, his true mate, and his future for a cheap, manufactured lie. The sheer, unadulterated rage that followed was biblical. Rossi didn't just throw Caleb out, he destroyed him. He unleashed his remaining legal team to freeze every asset Caleb possessed. He released the evidence of the illegal drug purchase to the authorities and the press. Caleb was arrested for black market trafficking and extortion. His reputation annihilated, left to rot in a federal holding cell. The stress of the indictment and the withdrawal from the synthetic hormones caused Caleb's body to reject the pregnancy within weeks. But destroying Caleb brought Rossi no peace. It only deepened the agonizing void where his mate should have been. Knowing that he had thrown away a flawless diamond for a piece of poisonous glass pushed Rossi completely over the edge of sanity. He was officially ousted as CEO the following morning. He didn't care. He had only one purpose left in this universe. 3 years evaporated into the misty coastal air. Oliver stood behind the counter of the newly renovated local archive, wiping dust from a vintage maritime compass. He had transformed from a broken, weeping Omega into a pillar of the community. He was confident, radiant, and fiercely independent. The scent of vanilla and toasted almond was pure and unburdened. "Daddy, look!" Oliver turned, a brilliant smile breaking across his face. A tiny tornado of energy crashed into his knees. Little Leo, 2.5 years old, was holding up a brightly colored drawing of a fishing boat. Leo was a stunning child, possessing Oliver's soft, expressive eyes. But the unruly mop of dark hair and the strong, stubborn set of his jaw were undeniable echoes of his father. "It's beautiful, my sweet boy," Oliver cooed, lifting the toddler into his arms and pressing a kiss to his temple. Oliver had built a beautiful, impenetrable fortress for the two of them. But fortresses, no matter how strong, always have a weak point. For Oliver, it was a simple, bureaucratic necessity. A week prior, he had needed to establish a secure, high-yield college trust fund for Leo. He used a specialized financial broker, believing his layered shell corporations would mask his identity. But the broker used an automated routing system through Chase Bank's National Registry. For exactly 4 seconds, Oliver's original Social Security number pinged off a server in Manhattan. 4 seconds was all Gideon needed. The bell above the archive door chimed, a cheerful sound that abruptly died in the heavy, suffocating silence that followed. Oliver looked up from his paperwork. The blood instantly drained from his face, leaving him as pale as a ghost. Standing in the doorway blocking the exit was the ghost of his past. Rossi looked nothing like the billionaire real estate tycoon of Chicago. He was gaunt, his cheekbones sharp and hollow, his designer clothes hung off his frame, rumpled and worn. His dark hair was heavily streaked with gray, and his eyes were the frantic, desperate eyes of a starving animal who had finally found water. The Alpha's gaze locked onto Oliver, and a choked, broken sob tore from his throat. Oliver's Omega instincts, dormant for years, flared violently, not with submission but with intense, lethal protection. He immediately shifted Leo to his hip, shielding the boy's face against his neck, and took a deliberate step backward behind the heavy oak counter. You have exactly 10 seconds to leave this building before I press the silent alarm and have the local authorities drag you out, Oliver said. His voice wasn't shaking. It was forged from pure cold steel. Rossi stumbled forward, falling to his knees on the hardwood floor. The great, terrifying Alpha was weeping openly, crawling toward the counter. Please, please, Oliver. I've searched for you every single day. I lost everything. I lost the company. I lost my mind. I know the truth now. I know Caleb drugged me. I know it was a trap. It wasn't my fault, Ollie. I never stopped loving you. Oliver stared down at the pathetic figure on the floor. 3 years ago, this revelation might have shattered him. Now it barely registered as a ripple on the calm surface of his life. Do you think that changes anything? Oliver asked, his tone laced with a terrifying indifference. Do you honestly believe that Caleb's deception somehow absolves you of your betrayal? Rossi looked up, his face streaked with tears, confusion battling with hope. I was manipulated. My biology was hijacked. Your biology was hijacked, Oliver agreed softly. But your mouth wasn't. Your mind wasn't. When the drugs wore off, you didn't come to me. You hid it. You lied. You set him up in an apartment. You decided to play house with my best friend behind my back because you were too weak to face the consequences of your actions. You didn't just break our vows. You tried to manage me like one of your corporate assets. Rossi opened his mouth to argue, but the words died in his throat as a shift in the air caught his attention. The wind outside howled, rattling the glass windows, but inside, a new scent pierced through the gloom. It was faint, sweet, and aggressively alpha. Rossi's bloodshot eyes slowly drifted from Oliver's face down to the toddler, clinging to his neck. Leo turned his head, his dark, familiar eyes locking onto the strange man on the floor. The realization hit Rossi with the force of a freight train. He stopped breathing. The resemblance was an absolute, undeniable mirror. The timeline clicked into place. The final, devastating truth shattered the last remaining pieces of his sanity. "Oh my God," Rossi whispered, his hands trembling violently as he reached out toward the child. "Oh my God, Oliver, is he... His name is Leo," Oliver said, his voice ringing with absolute, unyielding authority. He stepped further back, entirely out of reach. "And he is exactly what you threw away. He's my son," Rossi sobbed, a fresh wave of agony tearing through him. "He's my heir. Oliver, please let me see him. Let me fix this. We can be a family. I have enough money left. We can go anywhere. We already are a family," Oliver interrupted, his eyes burning with a fierce, quiet triumph. "And you are not part of it. You traded your place in this family the moment you let another Omega scent our bed." Oliver reached under the counter and hit the security button. "You wanted an heir so badly that you destroyed your own life for a fake one. Now you get to live with the knowledge that your true son is out here, thriving, and he will never, ever know your name." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. Rossi collapsed onto the floor, curling into a fetal position, his wails of grief echoing off the dusty archives. He had found his mate, he had found his heir, and he had realized, with soul-crushing finality, that he was permanently, irrevocably locked out of the paradise he had burned down. Oliver turned his back on the weeping Alpha, pressing a gentle kiss to his son's dark hair, stepping out of the shadows and into the bright, unblemished light of his new life. Hard karma had finally collected its debt. Thank you so much for experiencing this intense journey of betrayal and ultimate poetic justice. If Oliver's incredible strength and resilience inspired you, please hit that like button. Don't forget to share this video with fellow drama lovers who appreciate a powerful twist, and subscribe to our channel for more high-stakes emotional stories delivered right to your feed. Stay tuned for our next thrilling narrative.